This is Julia Widup with Seeker's Journey TV, and we have with us today Dr. Gail Feldman. Hi, Gail.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me on. I love having an opportunity to talk about the hero's journey. I think it's such an amazing way to highlight and to make sacred this life journey we're on, and it really is an adventure in midlife now. We're on what I call the new midlife. You know, it used to be 10 years in our parents' generation, and there were all these jokes about men having a midlife crisis and buying a red sports car and dating a 20-year-old, you know. Now it's no joke. We get 30 years of midlife. We get our 40s, 50s, and 60s. Mm-hmm. And during that time, there are so many crises and challenges that confront us. You know, we need all the help we can get to find our way through this journey to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which has to do with the gifts of wisdom.
Yes, the gifts of wisdom. And that's the Holy Grail. That's really the Holy Grail.
Exactly. And the reason I think this new book is so important, Midlife Crash Course, well, I describe my own midlife crashes, which involved a divorce after 34 years of marriage and several accidents with broken bones and a head injury. And I realized afterwards that there are so many millions of people, in fact, 2.4 million Americans will have closed head injury or TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, in this next year. So there are really serious personal problems, family problems, financial problems that we're confronted with. And I've learned that 40 to 60% of all symptoms presented to primary care physicians are caused by stress. Not just stress-related, caused by stress. And now, stress is killing us more than infection.
Yeah.
So this is serious stuff here. And because you're all about the hero's journey, the first thing I want to say about that is the fact that, you know, I used to say heroine because I speak a lot to women. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, the word hero comes from the Greek name Hera. And as you may know, Hera was the Greek goddess who was married to Zeus. So what we have in this name is a genderless word that really applies to the fact that we are all working on integrating the masculine and the feminine sides of our personality, of creating a balance there. And that's where our true power lies.
That's what I try to tell people. It's like doctor. It applies to either a male or a female.
That's right. That's right. And again, because there's been so many allusions to a midlife crisis that makes it sound kind of trite and, you know, what happens to other people, I wanted to put it in the context of the hero's journey in order to make it a sacred journey, because I truly believe that's what our lives are about. It is a sacred journey. It's about being on the path of transformation.
And midlife is when most people turn to finally start looking at their sacred contracts, their sacred responsibilities.
Yes. And we're kind of forced to, in that, you know, so many millions of people are caring for other people. Because we're living so much longer, many of us are caring for aging parents, or children, grandchildren, partner who's faced with chronic illness or terminal illness. There's even a new area in psychology now called compassion fatigue, where I went to a meeting on it because, if you're trying to hold down a job and take care of family members, and then you also become a caretaker for someone who's challenged in the later stages of life, you can absolutely have compassion fatigue and become ill yourself. So there are many methods that we use, and the last chapter in my book is called Supremely Supportive Self-Care for the Journey, because what we need are all kinds of methods to practice so that we become resilient and stay resilient through the journey. And these practices include prayer and meditation and breathing and self-coaching and what I call conscious grieving.
Conscious grieving. Because
conscious grieving. So many people will come, as you know, I'm a psychologist, so many people will come in. And men, for example, tend to get kind of stuck in their anger. Women tend to get kind of stuck in their depression. And when we put it in a context of this is your grief, suddenly it's made understandable and it's made more respected. Because something very profound is happening when we are grieving. We are processing loss, trauma, fear about the future, and we have developed a whole lot of defensive styles to protect us from suffering too much with those. So the understanding that can come at this time is really profound. And I want to talk a little bit about the hero's journey itself and the stages. Now, I like to say there are 7 stages because I think the number 7 is rather sacred. And the 7 stages are, first of all, the call to change or to grow or to heal. What do we do when we get a call to change? How many of us want change?
None of us.
We only want the ones that we choose, right? And the ones that look pretty good. Oh, I'm moving into a bigger, more beautiful house, But no, usually the call to change and grow is something that we go, what?
No way.
I don't think so. It's like some calls that come in on our cell phones, and we look at caller ID and say, oh, I don't think I can handle that one right now. And we put it off, and then we say, I think I'll just pretend I never got that call.
Right.
So that's what we do with change. We don't want any part of it. And that's why we find ourselves in the second stage of the hero's journey, which is being tossed on the path. I mean, suddenly we are just there. Yeah. Part of my journey was to be crashed into on a ski area, and I'm an expert skier, which means I was skiing fast, and ending up with a head injury. Well, boy, was that ever an unfamiliar area I would never choose to be in. Suffering a head injury, being impaired, having to be taken care of. That's one of the things that most of us, we're the go-to people. We're the ones who want to give the help. But the idea of asking for help, the idea of being laid up, being impaired, I lost the vision in my left eye for a time. I was so sound and sight sensitive, I had to lay in a darkened room, and the only sounds I could listen to were ocean sounds, nature sounds. And there was no promise that I was going to really get well and get back to being my normal self. So boy, was that ever unfamiliar territory. We don't like that one bit. The third stage is called the road of trials. And when we are in completely unfamiliar territory and when we feel out of control, what comes up? Starts with it's an F word.
Fear.
Fear. In all capital letters. Fear comes up. And the purpose for this stage, this time, is to begin to look at what I call the dragons of defense. Those ways that we've created structures to protect ourselves from growing, to make sure we can just stay the same, never have to grow. And of course, in all myths and fairy tales, there are monsters and there are dragons. Mm-hmm. And I write about in the book, in Midlife Crash Course, I write about one of my favorite movies, which is Shrek. Because in Shrek, remember Fiona? You know, Fiona she's up in the castle and she's guarded by this wild, fire-breathing, ferocious dragon. And we learn as the movie goes on that she's keeping a secret, and this is what we do about ourselves. She's living her false self. She's pretending that she's just a little cute princess, when in fact, she too is also an ogre, just like Shrek.
Yeah.
And that's what we all do. We hide the shadow parts of ourselves and we pretend they don't exist. And boy, on this journey, they come out and we are charged with really being in the underworld of our emotions and becoming more comfortable with them, becoming more comfortable with our unconscious, and making sure that we slay the dragons of defense so that we can become transformed. Now, unfortunately, before that can happen, we usually end up in the belly of the whale. And we all know from all of the myths and stories we love that that's the time when, like, all hope is lost. I mean, we cannot see any way out, any way that we can survive, or the hero, whatever we're watching. That's why we're on the edge of our chairs, you know. But he's going to die. And you know what? He does die. That part of him that was carrying around a false persona, that part that was trying to live an identity that was not going to fulfill his life purpose for himself or for those around him. And so we do die during that time. And boy, it's really something to, you know, I ask people sometimes in my talks, you know, have you ever wanted to be dead? Now, not, you know, were you suicidal? You know, were you thinking about killing yourself? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, did you ever just want to be dead? Well, I did, you know, when I was laying there with broken bones and my brain wasn't working and I had no memory and I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to be like this forever. I don't think, just shoot me. I mean, I just wanted to be dead. And that's the place that we're going through. That's the death and the resurrection part. Because what happens in every fairy story, in every myth, what happens? The hero does die in some way. He's transformed.
Yes.
And at the very last moment, there's supernatural aid. There's always supernatural aid to help us along the way. And for me, it came in many ways. It did come at one point in the form of a divine intervention because I forgot how to pray. I forgot how to meditate, and I was in pain all the time. So one morning I was sitting there and I thought, well, I'll try to do this again, and nothing, blank brain. So that morning, instead of crying, I just got so angry. I started yelling. So this was my angry prayer. It was literally, Jesus Christ! I'm supposed to be some kind of a healer. I can't even think and I can't breathe. Because my brain centers were all off and I couldn't breathe. I had a respiratory therapist, and as long as she had her hand on my belly or my chest, I could kind of direct the breath there. But left on my own, I just couldn't get a full breath. So there was my anger, and by the way, always remembering that anger is a part of grief. It's a grief response. Mm-hmm. And then I start bawling, and I'm crying and crying, crying. And suddenly I hear this voice, this lovely, deep voice. I will teach you to breathe. And I was directed to breathe love into my heart. And by the way, I started breathing it all the way up to the top of my head because that's where I had so much pain. Mm-hmm. So I would breathe in love all the way to the top of my head, and then I would breathe out fear and anger. The funny part was I didn't even know I was angry, but I'm hearing this voice say, and breathe out fear and anger. Anger, okay. So that was something that I did on a regular basis that truly helped me. Breathing is so important. You know, it's been said by a doctor at Columbia that we're suffering a contagion, an epidemic of oxygen starvation. An epidemic of oxygen starvation in this country because we're so pressured. What does every cell in the body need? It needs oxygen. So breathing is not just a cute little exercise. Breathing is a profound exercise when we are in stress. It's a profound healing method. I also had messages from animals. So, you know, we can get supernatural aid from nature, from animals. And I had a couple of snakes show up in my house, one in my bedroom. And of course, snakes represent
wisdom.
Yes. And the first thing that I thought of, which certainly held true for me and at this moment, is that I was shedding my skin. During this time of transformation, we are shedding our old skins, like the snake. The other thing that snake medicine tells us is that snakes are able to transmute poisons. So it was also a message about being able to transmute the poisonous energy in life and change that into growth, healing, and greater love. So I had messages from animals because, again, there's always divine intervention. I also had an experience when I was in Maui because I had several spiritual and body healers telling me I needed to get to Hawaii because that's my spiritual home. And I couldn't imagine how I would get there because I was so impaired. Well, one of my daughters offered to take me, and we did get there. And one morning, sitting on the lanai, I was looking out over Napili Bay, and I had just been reading about the chakra colors, and there's this beautiful rainbow, and I thought, oh yes, those are the very same colors that are bringing energy and life and growth into our bodies every minute of every day. And I thought, how lovely. And then the rainbow disappeared. It was early morning. My daughter came out, and I said, oh, there's the most beautiful rainbow. She started to meditate and write in her journal. And I sat there, and I concentrated, and I realized I really wanted that rainbow back. I wanted the rainbow. And I focused all of my attention, and I knew that I could create the rainbow. And sure enough, within about a minute, there was this beautiful rainbow arching over the entire Napili Bay. Wow. So I nudged my daughter. I said, Megan, look what I did. And so we're both giggling. And then suddenly there is a double rainbow. It's two beautiful rainbows.
Oh, my God, one for her.
Yes. And people are coming out and taking pictures and so on. Well, I knew, it was magical, but it was no magic trick, because the message I got from that experience was that if I could co-create a rainbow, two rainbows with God, that I could co-create my healing. Mm-hmm. That was the powerful message. So the next step, the belly of the whale is number 4. And that's when we die to our old selves and die to our fears and our defenses. The fifth is finding the treasure, finding the gifts along the way. And that's always transformed awareness. That's the rebirth into the authentic self. Now, the true gift, we talk about wisdom. The true gift in life, I've learned, is it's all about the capacity to love, and that after we come through these experiences, we have a greater capacity to love and to love well. Now, the sixth step is refusing the return. And I had a really funny, fabulous example of that, because many of these wonderful gifts I found happened when I was in Vietnam. Thailand and Vietnam. I had gone there with the Institute of Medical Education to give a talk, which was truly amazing and miraculous for me because, again, I had no memory. I was terrified to try to give a talk. Yeah. But it all came together, of course. I was helped that it would all come together, and it worked beautifully. And guess what the name of the hotel was that I was staying at in Bangkok? The Shangri-La.
Oh, how nice.
Well, guess what? I never wanted to leave the Shangri-La hotel. I wanted to move in and stay there forever. And I did not want to come home, because coming home meant going back to work. And that was daunting. So I really understood this stage in the hero's journey of refusing the return. You just don't want to go back to life the way it was. So the next step is returning and sharing the wisdom. And what I realized was that, part of the gifts that came from that entire adventure was that I did have more wisdom to share. I was going to have to write this book, Midlife Crash Course, about this journey we're all on, because I kept getting feedback from people that they too had been through divorces in midlife, that they too had suffered a head injury, and no one seemed to understand the implications of that. They too were taking care of an elderly parent and were losing their minds and their energy. Just so many similarities, because again, we're talking about, we all know there's 76 million baby boomers, but that's only, those who were born between 46 and 64, not even a 20-year period. We're talking about a 30-year period. So when you add the demographic tails onto these people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, there are multiple millions of more people who are really struggling with many, many life issues. And I wanted to share all of these methods that I described in Midlife Crash Course that come from positive psychology or resilient psychology, because it's all about creating resilience so that you can be the person you came here to be.
Yeah. And do the tasks you came here to do.
Exactly. And I think they're sacred tasks. And it's a sacred journey to become the person you were meant to be, not the persona that you thought you should be.
Right. Yeah. I actually love getting old. I'm amazed at how wonderful it is.
What do you love about it?
The wisdom. Oh, I think if I had been so wise when I was younger, things would have been so much easier.
Right. How does that show up for you when you say that wisdom?
Oh, mainly when I see young people around with having these struggles, and I'm trying to tell them, don't take this so seriously. It's okay. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And they're just so freaked out. And
Right. And one of the things that I think it's so important to teach young, actually all people, is that every challenge is an opportunity. Every challenge, just like every challenge on the hero's journey, is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for achieving a next stage in your life.
And if you fail, you will get the lesson again. So you'll have another opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, it's almost like you can't fail, because on the journey's path, it's like the way a rocket's programmed, to get to its target.
Yeah.
It's not programmed to go straight. It's called a guidance system, because we always get off path, and then it's guided back on. We get off path again, and we're guided back on. And that's the way we get to our destination. It's a guidance system, and it's all good, because in every challenge there is this opportunity.
And this has been a wonderful interview. Could you tell us where we can... Yeah, thank you for being with us. And can you tell us where we can get your book?
Yes, Midlife Crash Course, The Journey from Crisis to Full Creative Power, is most easily gotten on Amazon. And it's an ebook as well as a softcover regular book. So that's probably the easiest way to get it. And to leave a comment and contact me at www.gailfeldman.com and let me know what you think about the book. Again, I'm excited about this journey that we're all on. And I know that one of the things we're all tasked with is becoming more compassionate and having more compassion for our own struggles. And we're pretty good about having compassion for others, but sometimes we're not so good at having compassion for ourselves. So I think that's one of the more important messages. So, Midlife Crash Course. Pick it up and go right to the chapter on supremely supportive self-care for the journey. Then you can go back and read about my wild adventure.
And I will add it to one of the pages on one of my websites. Decided to add everybody's books, put everybody's books up on a page on my website too, so that people can learn about these wonderful things. There are so many people writing some wonderful things.
Well, thank you so much, Julia, for providing this space, this venue for us to talk about it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.